Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi is the spokesperson and head of Secretariat at the United Opposition, now called the United Alternative Government. Is it?
Yes.
Yes, yes. The United Alternative Government. Daktari, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
It's good to have you here. Karibu sana. The last time you were here, it was Eric, Mariam, and Janet. Today we have Felaris, who's just started day one on the show.
Welcome on board.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daktari.
And so she's going to welcome you with a quote.
So today's quote is an African proverb, actually a Swahili proverb, and it says, mgeni siku ya kwanza na ya pili karibishe za guest, but on the third day mpatie jembe. How does that speak to you?
Yeah, you reduce freeloaders. It's very appropriate in rural Kenya. Relatives come to greet you. And they greet you until you're tired. And you have not factored them in your medium-term budget. So it's useful that you transit them from consumers to producers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Makes all the sense like that.
It makes a lot of sense. They have to earn their keep.
Yeah,
Yes.
and their keep. It was very apt that she comes with that. She is the mgeni. And she says mgeni siku ya
Siku ya
kwanza.
kwanza.
Tumempa chai
Na ya
leo,
pili.
tumempa kahawa.
Yeah. Kesho hata
Ngoja.
tunaweza kupea croissant.
Kesho
love it.
croissant.
Yeah.
Jumatano.
Tatu.
Jipange.
By the way, croissant is French for crescent.
It's crescent.
Oh.
That's what it looks like.
That's the
Because
origin.
it's like
Yes. That's its origin.
Wow.
Lovely.
Wow.
Hey.
Dr. Kituyi, as we begin this conversation, before we come into what the alternative government is thinking of, there's a conversation that's here, that headline story in the Daily Nation today. Kenya still hosting Sudan rebel leader.
Yeah.
And, you know, this has been in the public domain for a while. You know what's happening in Sudan and the various efforts at the African Union level, at IGAD level, to try and bring peace to Sudan, but also Kenya's involvement in it. What's your immediate thought when you see Kenya is still hosting Hemeti?
From the day one, when it started emerging how closely President Ruto was dealing with Hemedi, I've been outraged, and I feel pained on very many levels. First and very fundamentally, the Rabbit Support Forces is a morphed group which used to be called Jangawid. They were a militia which was built as an illegal militia to take out war against black-skinned people in Western Sudan. The Zagawa and other African groups in Darfur. Up to now, as they move themselves into an alternative military force for the country, their main focus has been genocide against black people. So even just from a racial point of view, to imagine an African president being friends with, hosting, giving passports to, supplying weapons to an Arab racist whose main operating force is about genocide against black people, it becomes criminal on a racial basis. Just as an African, I'm outraged. This is the second thing. Kenya is increasingly becoming the second largest headquarters of the United Nations. As costs soar and Nairobi becomes an acceptable alternative at competitive price, UN agencies are relocating from New York and Geneva to Nairobi. We should reflect the ethos of the United Nations system. For us to be throwing ourselves in the face of international morality, supporting a criminal rebel force whose agenda is murder of black people. I mean, we must be crazy. Number three, the honor of Kenya as Kenya's defense forces has been the integrity that they do the things for the defense of Kenya. To get weapons being dropped into the Sudan labeled Kenyan army, it's already besmirching the integrity and the honor that Kenya's armed forces have had as one of the most trusted sources of peacekeepers around the world for the UN and its agencies. So there are so many different levels. And perhaps a last one. When African Union has condemned this terrorist organization, and only recently we were trying to become the leaders of African Union, how can we, at that same time, be the ones now that are not only abetting but facilitating the genocide being visited on the poor citizens of Sudan. Lastly, Sudan has been one of the most important markets of Kenyan tea. There we go. We have lost that market. And the president of Kenya just waved it aside like it is nothing. Well, now that he's moved into buying tea estates in Kericho, maybe start learning that it means something to just wish away an important traditional market, which may adjust to other tastes and not come back to Kenya when this disastrous adventure is over.
Right. Thank you for that.
If you were the president and this situation has escalated to the level it has in Sudan, and the international community was looking to Kenya to help shape this conversation towards mediation, what would you do?
The first thing is I'll expel every vestige of the presence of rapid support forces from the territory of Kenya. I will express our apologies to the rest of the world for having hosted such a criminal entity and reclaim the dignity of Kenya, respect within the region. In Eastern and Southern Africa, Eastern Africa first, in the Africa Union second, and the United Nations family third. That's a very first step that I will take. And third, I will share with the government in Khartoum anything and everything I know about the operations of these rapid support forces.
So would that lead to you actually mediating between these two?
Kenya cannot mediate when it has been so blatantly on the side of the enemy of the government of Sudan. What Kenya has to do is to rebuild confidence. Right now, we are not in a position to be mediators. You can't support one of the sides and then you just come up overnight and become a mediator. Mediators are people with neutral grounds. Pakistan is offering negotiations, mediation on the Iran issue because it can be trusted by both sides. But I mean, Khartoum cannot trust Nairobi. So the first thing is to clean ourselves from the rot of being associated with the rapid support forces, build the confidence of Sudan and encourage them that they can find a peaceful and livable solution, but we cannot offer the mediation services.
All right. Thank you for taking us through that, and it's good to hear from someone who, is a seasoned, diplomat, statesman, has worked in public service, and to get that global perspective, but also from just a Kenyan speaking. I wanted to know the United Alternative Government's proposition for our fuel crisis as well, because I know you're workshopping this. I know you're thinking through. I know you anticipate a time when you will be in power and you'll be facing the same global shocks, or worse, maybe better. You never know. I know so I know those conversations have happened. When you look at how much, Leo? 197 shillings for petrol and 196 for diesel. What would be different with the United?
A number of things. One of the few things that can ever justify an approach to the petroleum industry as government to government, it see guarantees from source governments that were cushioned from short-term shocks in the supplier market. It is possible when you're dealing government to government that the rough edges of spiking in the marketplace can be diminished by shielded government support. So at source level, we'll expect that. The second thing, if you have government to government, the market and the importer of the petroleum products should be government. Now in this case, our G2G should be the National Oil Company of Kenya. That's important because as a national entity, it can be a player in stabilizing and pressing downwards pressure on commercial markets of petroleum. Right. But because you have done government to government and the importing side is not government, it's commercial interests, we start suffering the consequences of greed layered as government to government. Right? So those importing companies which are not government do not do what government is supposed to do. So the first thing I will do is, if it's government to government, the importing side should be a parastatal petroleum company, the National Oil Corporation of Kenya, which could then be used to say, we are in a critical moment where profit is not a driving motive. Stabilizing and reducing the cost to the consumer and the implicit cost to enterprise and production is a major thing for us. That's one of the main reasons for parastatals. They stabilize conditions for the consumer market. But when you commercialize it, you adulterate the concept of government to government. So that's a starting point. The second point is this. There are still added costs that are not mandatory to be there. In a time of crisis like this, I'll suspend excise duty on petroleum. If you suspend the excise duty on petroleum, you'll substantially reduce again the amount of addition to the petroleum price on the pump in the country right now. As far as I'm concerned, the fuel maintenance levy, the road maintenance levy, can also be reduced in a next period that we're transiting through, and then you can reinstate it at appropriate level once we're through with this transition. So there are many levers still available to government, and it should not prostrate like it is helpless, it is a commercial beast out there about world markets. And this is dereliction from the responsibility as a custodian of public good.
You know, to any Kenyan who's listening to you right now, as they're all watching, is all of this rhetoric on, yes, it's possible to reduce the cost. It is, possible to remove all of these levies. We paint a picture that is so rosy until, the people that are speaking to us from the roadside come into government and say, actually, guys, this is a bit impossible.
Harder than it looks.
It's harder than it looks, okay? Get in and say, no, unfortunately, we have to continue with where things are, because if we are to even just run this country, then we need a little bit more than there is right now. So maybe let's balance the rhetoric. Reality versus what is this utopia we keep painting to Kenyans, that it's possible to buy petrol at 100 shillings. What is the actual reality? Because also, given that we're in a campaigning period, any kind of rhetoric that is against what the government is saying is very popular.
So tell me, the stages I've just described, are those rhetoric?
No.
All right.
They are.
I have not pretended that you can hold the prices constant as of today, as of they were before the start of the American aggression against Iran. But I am saying you can cushion the consumer by some instruments, meaning that the increases at the pump price could be less than what we're having. So I don't think that's very rosy. But I don't even think it is rhetoric to say we have lost one of the levers by converting government to private enterprise. Yeah.
How different would it be, Dr. Kituyi, if it was NOC that was importing this fuel?
There is the service cost by the importer, which is basically a profit margin, which if it's a parastatal, you can freeze profit making at a critical time because you are serving a public good. So if it was NOC, government could legitimately say, we'll project downwards our expectations on return on importation of petroleum because of needing to cushion the consumer from the spike in international oil markets. Which you cannot sufficiently do with the companies that are private and whose ownership includes people who are in political power.
So that when anything else,
the commercial interest of leaders is conflicting with their public responsibility as custodians of the public good.
Is there anything else that would be different?
There are lots of other things that could be different.
So let's say ADNOC was dealing directly with the National Oil Corporation of Kenya.
Yes.
So Abu Dhabi National Oil with the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. And then National Oil Corporation is required to go and get the oil from ADNOC to bring it to the country. How different would it be whether it was NOC or the private entity that's doing it so now?
All right, the thing is, the government arrangement has a credit facility built in, so there's no upfront cost in the petrol. It's throughput is after you sell to retailers is when you pay over the 3 months grace period. Two fundamental things. The first one is I don't know how they negotiated the G2G, because one thing for me will have been a major benefit is kind of shield us from commercial fluctuations, the spikes in source markets. And those governments are capable of that. They're supplying subsidized petroleum to a lot of other countries. And we're seeing that happening. So in negotiation, you seek advantage that we are not just like buying from high seas from private refineries. it's government
There's
to
a
government.
preferential price.
So the volatility in pricing will be reduced if you structure the G2G properly. And secondly, like I mentioned, the profit margins that are difficult to push down if with the commercial enterprises will be controlled by state. If it was the national parastate or petroleum company that is the importer. So I'm not saying that you wish away the spikes, but you can dampen the impact of uncertainties in the global marketplace by just structuring a genuine government-to-government contract.
The other argument that has been floated here is that the National Oil Corporation has been, in fact, it is so heavily indebted that it is actually struggling, even in the market. So would that struggling National Oil Corporation actually be able to handle importation of fuel for
When government set up parastatals, there was very progressive thinking that some of them may not be totally competitive on their own, but government subvention, government preferential arrangement will give them an edge because their benefits are direct benefit to the treasury. What has happened is that local politically related commercial enterprises are being given preference over the National Oil Corporation. And what does that mean? That means that their success is partly dependent on the underperformance of the National Petroleum Company.
Correct.
Yeah, so it is not just a miracle that the NOC is not doing well. It is being strangled for the interest. It is set up to fail by the interests which see mercantilists benefit from an unperforming parastatal petroleum company.
All right.
I have seen some of the best petroleum companies in the world are parastatals. Statoil of Norway. You know, for example, they build a petroleum industry around the parastatal, which has become a major international investor.
Yeah. Last one on the oil before we get into matters United Alternative Government. The fix, according to the president and the administration, was reducing VAT, or part of the fix to push on Kenyans, reducing VAT down to 8%. That bill went through Parliament in record time. To me, a signal that if they wanted to, they would. If they wanted to do something, they would. What do you make of the cushioning, the 8%? Is it sufficient? And of how the bill went through Parliament, how quickly it went through?
I mean, for me, the bill going through Parliament is absolutely not surprising at all. I mean, the most gullible Parliament since the Mlolongo Parliament of the late 1980s. That Moi will wake up and say, go right, they go. A select committee told them that the people do not want multi-party. And they were happy they celebrated. Then the president told them, no, I want multi-party. And they celebrated and voted for multi-party. I mean, we are back to those days. A very gullible parliament, driven by greed, absolutely impervious to public sense, masquerading as couriers of generosity when they go to distribute little monies given to them from State House. That's not a parliament that thinks about what is a larger good for the country. If you turn around now and say, I want this VAT to be increased to 18%, that parliament will pass it in record time.
Very quickly.
It is just how much the executive has a hold on the legislature in this particular moment. But I mean, I would have liked that they use that freehold they have on Parliament to do a bit more, suspend excise duty, reduce other levies on petroleum products. So I mean, the reduction of VAT is a step in the right direction, but there are a few more steps that could have been taken in that direction.
Right.
Before we move on, I want to come back into this one because the United Opposition is very vocal and clear in saying that, for example, the private sector players in the petroleum industry have links with the political forces.
Not all.
Not all. There are only 3 companies that are involved in the G2G.
Yeah, but okay. But you just said the private players in the oil industry that can include Rubies and Shell and Total. But
in the
those
G2G,
importers, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those importers in the G2G, as we know them, because they are out in the public domain.
Yes.
There is Gulf Energy, there is Galana, there is,
Oryx.
Oryx, yes. They have been in existence even before this administration came into office. In fact, some of them even in the Kenyatta administration, in the Kibaki administration in which you served, were there. And there's always this talk of, these companies have political connection. Does that mean that they keep shifting political connection into the government that's in power?
There are a number of things. Yeah, the process of building private enterprises in petroleum industry has been with us for some time. But there's a major phenomenon that has just happened in the last few years. Either registering new players like the Odinga vehicle, Odinga, the Saudi Arabian interests, or locals setting up enterprises abroad and buying back. So from Nairobi, you register in Dar es Salaam, or register in Mauritius, and you become a foreign investor in the petroleum industry. This is cheating nobody. We know who are these foreign investors from Mauritius and Tanzania. And you in Nation Group know about this better than most of us. So what has happened that some of the vehicles have been existing before, but now they have new principles. Even look at Gulf.
So
Gulf was originally related to friends of Kiraitu Murungi when he was minister in charge of petroleum. That is the origin of his growth. But now who are the owners, who are the principal players? It is the new sheriffs in town have bought their way into controlling infrastructure, which was set aside for such benefit, but now they write it larger. Yeah. At one time they operated more marginally. Now they become much more central, and particularly with the negotiation of government to government, they are given a monopoly over areas that to compete with larger multinational petroleum companies. So that's something different.
Dr. Kituyi, I'm a bit moved by this because this is what politicians always come out to say in public. This company is associated with so and so, and then it's now been associated with so and so. But why? If you were running a company, if you started a company today, and we said, I know this company, we know it, this one is owned by Ruto, and it's yours. And then Ruto moves from office, and somebody else comes in. Let's say Gachagua comes into office, and they say, it's yours, it's Gachagua's. Why would you be selling to all these entities?
Okay, there's a number of things that I think are fundamentally flawed in Kenyan public governance. Conflict of interest as a principle. Senior leaders in civil service or any public office should not do business with the state. That's a conflict of interest. So that is the principle you are dealing with. The fact that it has been abused by different regimes does not legitimize it. It doesn't mean that these ones have also done it, therefore these ones can do it. That is a wrong, negative justification. What we say is that we have reached a point as a society when you should say part of the fundamental changes necessary in this country is that if you're given high public office, you put your personal enterprises into a blind trust. Or you dispose of them. That is demanded of a lot of people in other places. When I joined the United Nations, I had to give clear audit of my private businesses to make sure that there's no potential of conflict of interest, that a company in which I have an interest is doing business with the United Nations.
Correct.
Now that principle should apply to us as part of shielding the public interest from the greed of individuals in office. Unless you do that, we just escalate the desire and the price of getting power because you groom your businesses and become a multi-billionaire by your state connections. Now the most blatant fusion of personal and state interests in the history of Kenya is happening today. We have never been this far in. But I think that high mark will be the best place for us to call out as a nation. Can we commit that in the next period, legislation is strengthened that no public officer can do business with the state? Today, governors set up enterprises. We become the main contractors. Every governor and their friendly MCS start importing second-hand earth-moving equipment from Dubai because now they become the contractors constructing, maintaining roads. And at a national level, you're seeing the same. I mean, Biwott did it with shoddy tarmacking of roads across the country because it's powerful, and we have not called time on this.
Okay.
So I think there's no shortcut to it. Blaming and kicking the can down the road just increases greed for those on the outside. If I want to do this, let me grab political power. Let us empty that can. You go to public office, you cannot do business with government.
Let's take a break.
Yes.
When we come back, we'll just push a little bit onto that one, on what's the commitment of the United Opposition. When Ruto was the deputy president in opposition, he talked about cartels in the oil industry. He was accusing other people. Now he's in power, And those who are with him and now in the opposition are pointing fingers at him and accusing him of running cartels. So it's the same kind of conversation. It's a cycle. So what's the fix here, once and for all? Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi is a spokesperson and the head of Secretariat at the United Alternative Government, also known as the United Opposition. He's our guest for this hour. We'll be back in a moment.
Business.
Indeed, we are hosting Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, and on Fixing the Nation today, it's Mariam Bishar, Eric Latif, and Felari Swumboy, our new fixer. Some feedback from our fixers online. Stephen Kosiro says, if you remove all the fuel levies, excise duty, the taxes, etc., what happens with the budget deficit where the above was intended to be used? I mean, it's good to be realistic than populist. Edwin Mashere says, promises is failure to us. We need justice, not pressure. Gen Z use money, we need changes. Like Kombe says, Daktari, many politicians speak well but act little. If you are in charge today, what specific expenditures would you cut? What political cost or loss are you willing to pay for that? Because kunaibwa, he continues, I mean, what unpopular decisions should President Ruto or Parliament immediately make to fix Kenya's economy? Does the economy need fixing after all?
Oh, that's a very, very, very good question that I would like to venture some suggestions about. Where can we cut off the fat? Abolish 98% of the positions of special advisors at all levels of government. I was a very effective Minister of Trade and Investment. My advisor was the Permanent Secretary and the directors of the specialized divisions. You have professionals trained to know they are tough. You hire political hangers-on who have no idea about the job in your ministry, and they are given the talking points by civil servants who know the thing to say, and they are paid more than those civil servants because they are special advisors. So already by a sleight of hand, you wipe out excess public expenditure by abolishing all the so-called advisors. We have professionals in government who can do that. Secondly,
Sorry, just before you go to the second one,
Yeah.
when you were Minister for Trade,
Yeah.
was there such a thing as an advisor in any level of government?
actually in the office of the president, there was not even an advisor to the president. It came in his second term. When Kivuta Kibwana and Rafael Tuju were appointed as special advisors. But there was no such a thing as advisor. If there was need for consultant service, you could have a time-specific, valued consultant's fee for a service. But there was no running budget for a person called an advisor.
There was actually a body called the National Economic and Social Council.
Yeah, the
right?
National Economic and Social Council was an entity that gave professional advice, particularly on husbanding Agenda 2030. How can we embed our larger vision into our planning instruments for the shorter term? And how can we see the views of diverse audiences outside government on what government is doing? To me, one of the worst mistakes that happened under Uhuru is the scuttling of the National Economic and Social Council. Yeah, because we're sailing without a compass. That was it. That's what it was. Yeah, but you know, just before finish, I mean, just cutting light at the level of civil service is not enough. Leakages of the budget. You have been seeing the West. Unaccountable resources, drainage, governors uncontrollably buying the flowers for 5 million shillings, like the not very, very clever governor of Bungoma County did around the Madaraka Day event, when there are no provision, no beddings in public hospitals in this county. There are so many silly things being done, both at devolved and national government, which just demonstrate we can save a lot of this money. Look at the budget of State House. There absolutely is no justification that you have that. The State House has almost more money than the judiciary. And all it does is to keep the president with 2 Puma choppers flying around the country virtually every day at immense cost to citizens, going to do things like he did in my village. He flew in with 5 other helicopters and parastatal vehicles and ministers to do what? To lay a foundation stone for a primary school being built by Safaricom Foundation.
You know, it's interesting that, we've seen State House expenditure, but I want to come back to a statement that you said that the country can only afford 10 counties, as opposed to,
Yes,
the current standing.
this has been my position from before the constitution was done, by the way. I'm not
So,
starting today.
How does then that speak to devolution as it is right now, given that, again, just by you, we can only afford 10?
All right. So, to me, the reason that the fundamental justification of devolution is create a second tier level of government with sufficient geographical and resource scale to be a mini state that can budget, can develop professional services, and can deliver services closer than the national level. And eventually, developmental mandates in properly developed systems cease to be the matter of national government, and they go to that developed level. Now, there was the politics of how to develop in Kenya. Many of us felt very strongly that the then provinces were the right scale at which you devolve. But there were some super large provinces, primarily Eastern Province and Rift Valley Province, which could be split each into 2 counties. So that was our thinking.
Okay.
But then
Northeastern?
Northeastern, if you look at its numbers and scale, actually it's not too big.
But
Eastern and Rift Valley. But geography is not representation. You can even look at American states. That it will be politically nice to say we have so much space, one more.
Yeah.
That way, the constituents called North Horr should be 10 constituencies, because North Horr constituency is larger than Western, Nyanza, and Rift Valley put together. No, Western, Nyanza, and Central.
Okay.
Provinces put together as more like North Horr constituency.
Okay.
So it's not just geography. But it's arguable. You could say perhaps the Rift Valley, Northeastern could also be split. But fundamentally, the indicative number should be not more than 10 devolved units. You have been seeing some regional efforts to plan some things together.
Yeah.
Lake Basin things. You just see that the geography of shared resources will require larger scale than divided little entities like Nyamira here, Kisii here, and Bigor here as counties. So that is one. The second thing is, we cannot, as a country at our current revenue base, sustain the cost of devolution into 47 units. We're struggling, and even at the best of times, we could not be able to deal with it. Politically, it's popular to say, devolution is good, increase the percentage of public resources that goes to devolution. But there is so much leakage of the resources we're devolving. There's so much repetition of functions. There's so much disaster. Look at the professions. Have you talked to a doctor who works in a rural county in Kenya? The first thing they will tell you, there are 2 things. First, there is a constant expected bribe before you get employed in the county government. It ranges from, for example, in Kakamega County, it is 200,000. Bungoma, I know, is 100,000. To the chief officer, who is sharing with others.
This is to get employed.
To get employed. Number 2, county governments find clinical officers cheaper to hire as doctors than professional doctors. So functions that belong to qualified doctors are given to clinical officers because they are cheap doctors. So I wish there was established a medical service board, like the public service, like Teacher Service Commission, an entity independent of county governments regulating professionalism and mobilization and deployment of medical officers to different parts of the country, instead of scuttling it and giving their responsibility to counties, which do not underappreciate the value of professional services. So there are so many different reasons for which I think eventually it's politically not very popular. But if we are to do a new constitution today, one of the things I'll push for is keep devolution at 10 counties across the country. What you are having as counties today, they can be sub-counties.
Are we too far gone?
We are
13 years of the 47 units. Now imagine having to start a conversation where you're telling all those counties that you've mentioned, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, and all, amalgamate into one called Western County.
Look, a national conversation is not asking counties to amalgamate. A national conversation is say, we have had a new constitution that has been with us now for 16 years. We have had enough time to get over what is called the hardware disease, the unforeseen little problems in fixing it. And we have seen what works and what doesn't work. The institutions of oversight are just politicized because of parliamentary committees where they appear to be humiliated, the impunity of those who think they are gods, rejecting to appear before those committees, that these different things cannot be fixed democratically that way. They can be part of a larger national conversation about how can we do a fundamental surgery in the existing good constitution we envisaged, but we did not see how much it will cost us. That national conversation is necessary and it should not be suspended because we're thinking about who is the next standard of the big house.
Okay. Into matters united opposition now. Mine is just very simply, when is the united opposition uniting?
You know, opposition in Kenyan history unites up to the day before elections. The most successful opposition unity, which came to power in 2002, really formed 2-3 months before the election. So there is no clear timeline for the united to be completely united. There are so many other dynamics out there. You know, when we started forming the united opposition, we did not envisage Sifuna and Walinda Mwananchi as a force. You cannot wish them away today. And you know, you cannot talk about united opposition without saying, is the battle inside ODM between those one-termists and two-termists going the way of those who talk and think like us or those who talk and think like Ruto? And at the end of that, you say, how do we engage? It's not about accommodating them. How do we engage with this? They have a legitimate mandate. They are invigorating younger voters whom have not sufficiently invigorated the way they are doing. They are bringing out some numbers of Gen Zs who are getting registered as voters. That conversation takes time. You cannot conclude it before they have concluded their battles within ODM. And until that stage has been reached, the opposition cannot say, now we set sail with our ship. There are passengers still coming on board who have to be part of writing the script of where this country is going.
I'm really trying to think through. It's a statement that a spokesperson would say. But then you look at the ground. To me, Rigathi Gachagua looks preoccupied with battling President Ruto. His priority is just how many, jabs can I throw on a daily basis or on a weekend basis. Dr. Matiang'i, I don't know. What is it? The vigor, the verve, is lacking. You don't see it in him. You look at, for example, Martha Karua. Kalonzo Musyoka has been quite vocal, quite active, especially when it comes to trying to represent matters of public interest. He's kept that on track. So we'll give him that. Then go to, for example, Martha Karua, who has been, again, doing a lot of the background work, but I don't know, not as visible qua ground as some people like to say. Eugene Wamalwa, I would put him alongside Kalonzo. You know, vocal, outspoken, but I don't know what's beneath the rhetoric, for example, what this united opposition quite stands for. I'm just trying to say, as it stands, even in the individual factions, as we wait for this amalgamation, the united opposition is not inspiring much confidence as it stands. Is there a fix for that, or is there something I'm missing on this end?
Okay, the number of different things. This challenge of institutional development as alternative government, which means the development of Secretariat, the preparation and operationalization of code of conduct, ethics, leadership code, the issues of inclusion, and the issues of the government agenda. There are so many things, not just what you appear on the stage. But having said that, Gashagua's role as showing what is wrong with Ruto is a very, very important component of the political competition. Why not Ruto, but us? You get it? It's not the only thing that you have to do. But casting Ruto in his true light about what he does not do, is part of the agenda of the opposition. In every country, in every jurisdiction, an important component of government is showing what's wrong with those who are governing, how they are making mistakes.
Correct.
The second component will be what alternative will you offer. Now, we are in a country where, interestingly, and I shared with you of script, that if you poll Kenyans, what is the most important interest in making political choices? It's about whether it's 1 term or 2 terms. I am going to vote on the basis of whether I want Ruto to go home or not. Now, so when that comes out, and you combine it with the reality that in our multi-party experiment as a country, Kenyans vote against a candidate more than voting for a candidate. And so the growing anti-Ruto constituency is a strength that you can say now what Gachagua is doing is building, confirming why Ruto must be given an escort to Sugoi. But the weakness of that is that it underdevelops the alternative vision of what government will look like. And that is the free pass that we give to politicians. Ruto campaigned against oligarchies and dynasties and things. So you said, okay, we are against dynasties. We are against the families that have dominated our politics. But the next day, bottom up remains just a very loose-bodied entity. Now they can build anything they want to put into it. And I think as a country, one of the weaknesses of our democracy is that we do not have a sufficient scoreboard against which we'll assess the agenda of the next government. We are much more driven by what happens on election day.
Correct.
And to get to that election day, the method of Gachagua is extremely effective. But now, as a nation, we need to complement that with the day after.
I assume, Dr. Mukhisa, that's why the opposition leadership actually sat down and agreed that let Dr. Kituyi head our secretariat. Because he will think beyond our political rhetoric. He will think governance. He will think, what do we need to do?
Don't build around me much more.
I'm assuming that's why they would do that.
But I'm telling you that...
so let me ask you then.
Don't write too much into the role of Kituyi.
As head of secretariat, right? Have you conducted polls to gauge the sentiment of Kenyans?
No, there are a number of things. First of all, the individual parties within the opposition have been carrying out, some of them have been carrying out polls. Others have been buying poll results from polling institutions, which are in the commercial market already doing polling for consumer organizations and so on. And they have sometimes dovetailed into government-funded polls, which you sometimes have access to. But as we move towards consolidating as an opposition, as now transitioning into an alternative government, certain institutional arrangements become necessarily important. And these are mostly in the planning stages as of now.
Okay.
About consolidated opinion polling and setting up different institutions of alternative government. Yeah.
So you do not know what Kenyans want as of today?
We have an idea what Kenyans want.
How do you know that?
But I've just given you the explanation.
That you
independent polling,
by
dovetailing into polling by polling agencies that have been commissioned by the government and others.
So
and also we have people, we are connected to some grassroots leaders who also share with us the sentiments. The Mwananchi does talk to us also through different persons that we deal with.
What do Kenyans want?
A number of things. Kenyans want fundamentally an economy of opportunity. Kenyans want a realization of hope. Kenyans fear producing children who will die poorer than their parents were. Digression economically between generations. And I have spoken to this at a public lecture I gave at a prestigious university one time, that democracy survives and prospers on the foundation of hope. That people expect that tomorrow my condition will be better than yesterday. But if a generation looks at their children and they're likely to become poorer than their parents, the foundation of democracy is shattered.
Okay. So Kenyans want a brighter future.
Kenyans want an expectation that my children will be at least as well off as me. And when they see unemployment, the lack of opportunity, the university graduates going 4 or 5 years without a job, coming back to the parents who sold land to take them to school, to give them clothing, young men and women deferring marriage because they cannot afford it. That is a fear that they hope somebody can give them hope that this can be reversed. And that hope has so many components. So you can describe about specific things, about a burden on the cost of living, about the burden of corruption, about the burden of health services, an increasing burden of education. We were playing a clip from Mwai Kibaki when he was telling a cabinet lunch. You have seen it in the clips recently. We want you to go out there and find those people who are still not taking their children to school and tell them to stop this silly thing and take children to school. Government begging people to take children to school because education is free. To a situation where government is being begged, please don't get my children out of school because I can't afford. So these are issues, but the core of it all is cut out all those things that impede the redemption of hope. That things can get better, that my children have a future, that I can afford to live out my dreams.
Do you think, Dr. Kituyi, this is any different today in 2026 than it was in 2021 or in 2016?
The hope of a better tomorrow has always been a hope since independence. Even the celebration of independence was tomorrow we are going to get better. Remember Tomboya telling people, let them dream and celebrate like every leaf will become a banknote tomorrow. But the thing is, approximate their aspirations, demonstrate that there is a change in the direction of hope, reduction of hopelessness, and demonstration of rising new opportunity. Kibaki 1 demonstrated it. It is possible.
You know, we are speaking to political euphoria, which is what happens every time we are about to get into elections. There's this wave of hope, of aspiration, but there's also apathy and just fatigue when it comes to matters politics. Much as we know, at the end of the day, we need to show up at the ballot, vote, if we want the very changes that we, want in this country. Now, we have a very big block of voters, which is the younger generation, the Gen Z. And just borrowing from, again, your recent utterances is you say the opposition is still not fully speaking to this group. If anything, they're still... How would I put it? They are a very unpredictable lot. 1 minute, they know how to mobilize in their own way. Right now, there's the Tukukadi initiative, which, again, the politicians have jumped onto it and really taken ownership of something that was not their initiative. So how are we looking to, one, speak to them? We have about 8 million of them that are potential voters. What are we doing in terms of pushing them, one, to register as voters, one, to really answer the big question that Eric was asking, which was, outside of getting President Ruto out, what is the political purpose that the opposition is really speaking to? Because they need to be convinced. Otherwise, the apathy remains. They would rather not go and vote.
In my sense, in my personal view, the Gen Zs at their age have not been as apathetic as the millennials were at that stage. There was much more cynicism about public engagement, about much more that they cannot make a difference, they're all the same. That sense of disengagement was much more prevalent among millennials than among Gen Zs. And as a person, I feel what I felt when I was a young man sacrificing it all to go into the trenches to fight for return of constitutional democracy. I feel I relate with what Gen Z's mood is right now. It's not apathetic. It's just that don't try to use us. We have identified our space. We want to grow into that space. Encourage us and facilitate us to grow into that space. And engage us as adults who know what they want.
I want us to put a pin on that.
Just before you do, to my mind, the self-mobilized effort about registration as voters and the rising significant mobilization ability of Linda Mwananchi group are contributing to that phenomenon of converting the potential into an actual voting bloc. And you don't want to wish them away, and I'm very happy about them emerging. I would like them to play an ever-increasing important role. They will actually sufficiently radically transform the content of the promise, the agenda of the alternative government. And that I think that is one of the most important hopes I have, apart from politicians who have been in politics before wanting to retain positions for themselves. Let us start getting the vibes from this new generation, which is willing to engage and to demand their rightful space.
Well, the vibes, keep them coming. Seeing so much of your feedback on our live stream. We'll be right back with Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, just talking all matters, the united alternative government. This is Fixing the Nation. Larry Somboy, Eric Latif, and Mariam Bisham.
Indeed. Back in conversation with Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, who is the spokesperson and head of the Secretariat of the United Opposition or the United Alternative Government. And we're talking about, what Kenyans want, where we're heading, and, what's the game plan for the opposition? What is the game plan now? Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, as we were going to the break, you said that you're seeing what's happening within the other opposition entities, like the Linda Mwananchi group. You've spoken highly of them, saying that they're doing a good thing in galvanizing and enticing the younger population to come and vote. What's the future? Do you see a future where Linda Mwananchi and United Opposition work together? And if they did, what would each be negotiating for?
Right. There are two important strands about Linda Mwananchi initiative. The first one is that a section of ODM which is battling to inherit and to protect that progressive component of the history of ODM that was threatened to be submerged under the broad-based or bread-based. So to me, it's important that there's redemption for that progressive wing of ODM, and it doesn't just disappear because Raila has died. And in that regard, I wish them real well. And secondly, the political leaders of Linda Mwananchi Initiative are politicians. And we talk, we constantly, you saw two weeks ago, I was hosting Sifuna in my rural home. We talk with them, and we individually are associated with many of the leaders there, and saying, okay, you have one battle which is an ODM affair, but there's a different battle which is a national affair, mobilizing and encouraging more people to become actors, players, voters, which redeems and expands the ranks of those who see an alternative for configuration. And we keep constant in our conversation is that we envisage only one group to confront Ruto at the next election. So for now, as they battle internal institutional competitions within ODM, there isn't too much we can do as an external group. But that we assure them that we are committed to engagement with them as one unified force before the next election. How that happens, who takes what position, is a matter that depends on so many different dynamics that cannot be invented at the studios of Nation Media.
I have to ask though, are you prepared as a united alternative government to be the co-principals with Linda Mwananchi or another perhaps young leader cropping up as the principals?
We have dealt with this issue before. Sometime last year, there was significant pressure within the opposition that we should pick our presidential candidate early and start building the campaign around that person. And some of us oppose that on the ground that we have no idea who is out there and is thinking of becoming a presidential candidate. We have no idea of what other groups will morph into political forces. To foreclose on their ambitions will be to narrow the choices from which you are picking a presidential candidate. So let the movement grow. Let the capacity of us to cultivate public commitment to alternative leadership grow. Let others with ambitions out there walk out of the woods. And then at an appropriate time, we say, okay, there are different rivers that have flown into this lake. So how do we structure the leadership of the team? So
That's very diplomatic,
you don't
but it doesn't speak to the willingness. Of course, we can. Time will tell, and then you can decide how you'll make these formations, and the different streams will come and flow into the river. That's time. But are you willing to be the stream that is absorbed, or do you want to be the stream that is? Are you a Kirichwa River, a Nairobi River? Which way?
The way I put it. At this stage, we are not in a position to say we are welcoming people to come on board us. We are saying we are ready to engage. The terms of engagement will depend on the capacity of what other group is coming towards us. Yeah. So it's not about somebody hosting the other necessarily, but if you are a smaller group and you're coming to us, we'll offer you a seat, we'll host you. Correct. If you are a larger group, we say let us engage and structure how we are engaging. Where's this vision? It can be the blue and white Nile. It doesn't have to be a stream flowing into a river.
Dr. Kituyi, do you foresee a situation where Kalonzo Musyoka, Dr. Matiang'i, Rigathi Gachagua are not on the presidential ticket and they are backing a completely different person?
Say Sifuna, for example.
This is partly why I've said that nobody can foreclose on what will happen. The Linda Mwananchi might even come up with a different political presidential candidate other than Sifuna, and you cannot wish that person away. I think I am not in any position to start speculating about who will be my president. I only know it will not be Mukhisa Kituyi. But we welcome the development of fair methods of engagement to determine who will be our presidential candidate. But that does not close the shop to any existing candidates within the united opposition.
Let me read 3 comments or 2. Andrew Minor says, can we have a fresh start? And he writes fresh in capital letters. Can we press the reset button in Kenya? We elect fresh faces. Let Ruto go home together with everyone else that has been part of destroying this nation. Waende wote. Ask Jeremy, can the United Opportunity back Maraga?
The citizens have a right to look for an alternative that does not include people who have run for president before. That is a democratic right. And that is an impulse that also becomes part of the conversation about how to choose who is our presidential candidate.
Correct.
But the reality of politics is who are going to decide who is the candidate they present to the electorate. It's not always Mwananchi who chooses who should be their candidate.
Yep.
People say which product is best to put into the market under the circumstances, and that we can convince Mwananchi to buy into. So those impulses are there. Fresh blood is useful. I don't know about Maraga because I respect him very much as a person of integrity, but I have never had any political conversation with him. So I don't know how we can make the pathway towards contention in an opposition configuration he has not joined. Yeah.
This the formula, I guess, will have to become apparent very clear, because the questions just keep coming in different forms, but essentially the same thing. Calvin Bestman is saying, as Gen Zs, we understand what is at stake, and the opposition has to be united to defeat Ruto's led faction. If we said, give us the presidency or we're not boarding, would you budge as Linda Mwananchi? It's more or less the same question in like 1,000 different...
I think it would be very nice if they become a large constituency with voting cards for them to put that on the table. But until and unless they have passed a certain threshold in converting their numbers into voting capacity, they cannot make that demand. So I would love a situation where they grow sufficient numbers as registered voters to place such a demand on us.
I mean, we've seen the numbers from IEBC going by the statement they put out on Friday last week on the continuous voter registration. And the current numbers are at 1.37 million registered between, 30th March, and that's the cumulative number from 30th March to the 16th. Today we're on the 20th, and this has only been an increase of 495 from the last exercise that they did. Now, these numbers are not very encouraging, given that we have a very big target being 6 million. And if we could do more than that, even better. So how is the united opposition playing their part when it comes to civic education and really getting the people who want to go register as voters? And second to it is we've seen concerns coming from, again, the united opposition on the voter register. JB Muturi has been very vocal about it and pushing for a review of the same. So how then do we make sure that by the time we're going to the polls, that this is a thing that is not just making headlines and we're making noise about it, but there's actual work that is done on that voter register?
Okay, there are so many different things here. First of all, with IEBC, the voter register, there are concerns and mixed signals about formally registered voters who may drop out of the records. That's a matter that we need very urgent and clear clarification about. We have a consistent engagement now with the IEBC, and Muturi is our lead person on this matter, and we will continue even about developing the integrity of the voting exercise. You know, we are in court on the locus of declaration of final result. Why should Bomas have any role in this? Yeah? There's no voting at Bomas. Why should we listen to Bomas to tell us who has won the presidential election? The elections are won on the ground. What should be the point at which you say this is the final result? Why do you create a gray zone that can be manipulated? And so that is a matter that is before court, and we are very interested in how that develops. Similarly, we have been engaging the commission about how can they win our trust. They are basically constituted by a broad-based government who are not players in the composition of the commission. Can we find a basis in reason and in engagement and in practice to trust that they represent the collective good and not just the partisan for those who put them into station? Now, as for the voter registration, we are grappling in this, but I don't think we have found a sufficient handle on it. We do. At all the rallies that the opposition has been having, we're encouraging people, take the vote. But obviously, if you look at the statistics, as for the voter registration, it doesn't portray a sufficient response in numbers that we'll expect, so which means that there's a challenge before us all, both those in government and those in opposition. How do we turn people from basically opinion holders on politics into active, engaged contributors in shaping the political course by getting a voter's card? Media, civil society, professional groups can also contribute beyond existing political formations.
Can I be honest? I think the difference is who is asking people to register as voters, because Tukokadi has good momentum, right? And we've seen a good increase. To be fair, a lot of the people who are needed to register as voters are very much of this Fagia Wote group. They're just like anything that has the political class in it, we don't want to be a part of it. So when it is that person saying, endo uchukue voters card, no. But when it's another young person saying, this is your future, toka, tuonyeshe uko kadi, then it becomes much easier, which then brings, which is why I think eventually that conversation about who is the river, who is the stream, we'll have to get into it. But I wanted to hang on a little bit on what you said about this national tallying center called Bomas, and the merits of that case, just very briefly. Results are final at the polling station. What happens at Bomas is it's a tallying center. Correct. Or what happens?
That's what it's supposed to be. Okay. But that's not what it has been. And not starting today. From 2007,
KICC.
We have had very many, from KICC to Bomas, we've had very many cases of what leaves the ground is different from what is announced in Nairobi, particularly constituencies whose results are delayed. You all know about those cases. So the notion that it's just a tallying center, we don't need a tallying center. We just need computers. We need mobile phones to tell you what is declared. The media can do that. The notion that boxes have to be physically moved from the countryside to Bomas, and then somebody says tallying and we're still waiting for results. That is a gray zone. It allows for speculation about intent, and our history is littered with evidence of doctored results. So we want to exclude that. We're not blaming that they're going to attempt it, but let us get rid of our gray zone that we've had from before. But now going back to that about the basis of persons registering, you know, it is in the past one of the main fertilizers of public participation in politics was a program funded by Friends of Kenya, diplomatic missions in this country, which supported civil society on citizen voter registration and empowerment, civic education for youth recruitment as actors in politics. You remember at the start of this century, particularly the US, was a very important and bold supporter of self-organized civic groups to be empowered to be politicians, to have votes and to be candidates. Unfortunately, the donor community has been cowed very much. It has set very high walls around itself, and its engagement beyond what government does, support to different groups that help to mobilize people to become voters, to be empowered, even to be candidates, has disappeared. And I think even the gains of having more women on the tickets, which were a direct consequence of that empowerment and mobilization with donor support, is going to dip in the absence of such an effort. So I think, again, friends of Kenya could be encouraged. They could do better. And Kenyan corporates could also start looking at contributing to citizen empowerment that can translate into more participation by becoming voters, more mainstreaming of outrage and criticism through institutions that allow for them to give alternative leaders to the country. This cannot only be done by political parties. Political parties want to secure what they have and expand on it to win power, but it may not be the best instrument for recruiting new players. The youth initiative, I encourage it. I feel the security of Kenya is what is best for younger Kenyans. And if they can translate this into political players, I'll be very glad, regardless of how it moves as a political force. Whether they wipe us out into oblivion or they become our partners, to me, it's secondary. If it is good for Kenya, it is good for Kenya.
I think the primary thing, actually, is just hearing you speak and remembering your own history in politics. I think the Fagia Water time is now. Let me tell you why. Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, when he was Gen Z, he was very, very active, right? Very, very active, very vocal. Many of your generation did this. And they got into government with the Kibaki administration. And in fact, the big accusation was the Kibaki administration was formed largely by people who were also supported and honed their skills in the civil society movement. And they felt that those people went in there and they let everyone down. The Uhuru administration came and clamped down on civil society. And that was direct. Dr. Matiang'i was the cabinet secretary for Interior when there was that clamping down on development partners. And they will tell you informally, they were getting all those conversations on what are you doing in the country, we'd like to coordinate what you're doing. Rigathi Gachagua, when he took over as deputy president, he was the one coordinating development partners in the country. And it's the same kind of language that there was. So there's the people who have been there, who have participated in stifling that kind of development, cannot be trusted really by the younger population to actually champion whether it's domestically funded civil society or foreign funded civil society.
Okay, I grant this substantial truth in what you're saying, but having said that, let me correct the history of it a little. In the 90s, the transition with the so-called second liberation could not have been possible without the partnership that we, the Young Turks, molded with civil society players. So that is true. Secondly, they played an important role in our winning power in 2002, including the development of instruments of governance, the agenda for our National Economic and Social Council, the agenda for the immediate government economic plan. But there was something that happened. We stifled civil society, but not in the way of brutalization that followed later. What we did is that when Kibaki became president, some of our important partners from civil society crossed over to becoming officers of government. So the Kivuta Kibwanas of this world and the others who were major parallel players in the democratization process became part of government. So you look at the Kibaki period, civil society declines its performance, not because of an onslaught from government, but because of a co-option, kind of decapitated by success. Co-opted into public office or into state institutions. But the next generation of leaders of civil society did not mature to take that space.
Yeah.
So indeed, later on, there was suppression of civil service, particularly government surveillance against donors for supporting civil society. But that should not lead to a retirement of civil society. I mean, civil society does not wait for invitation to grow. And we are in conditions where the opposition can backstop civil society when it mobilizes and defends its space. It is that engagement today remains limited, remains weak, but it is possible. Under Moi's last term, the circumstances were more difficult than they are today. Even domestically, we can raise the resources to make civil society vibrant and independent sectors vibrant beyond what they are doing today. So pointing at the mistakes of the past, which exist, which are true, is not sufficient to talk about a space that is being left and Gen Zs are having to informalize the mobilization that could have been done by independent sectors and self-recruited civic players.
I don't know, I feel like Eric's question was more on entrusting the people who have pushed back on civil society with power again. And he gave examples of Fred Matiang'i and who else?
Gachagua.
Yes, Gachagua, etc. Who have all been part of regimes where clampdowns happen in one form or the other.
Some of us are committed never to be part of regimes that clamp down on civil society.
You're in it.
Fair enough.
As we come to conclude this conversation with you, Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi, you are at the center of a machine, an engine that is putting together forces that would want to see President William Ruto out of office in next year's election. Now, speak to Kenyans. What must happen for Ruto to leave office? For Ruto to lose an election democratically?
Okay, it's interesting that you put those as meaning the same thing. There's a difference between what happens for Ruto to lose an election and what happens for Ruto to leave office. And I want to talk to both of those. First of all, President Ruto won an election with a majority of 200,000 votes. And a large plank of the electorate that voted for him were from Rima. A very significant trend and evidence suggesting of a dire collapse of his support in that part of the country. For him to win an election, he needs a similar block of votes to replace what he loses from Rima. I look at the alternative areas where we could have counted on him getting those votes. And I see the decimation of his support in the Luya country, Trans Nzoia and Western counties. Mixed fortunes in his recruitment of sections of the Luo constituency, which had hoped will substantially go a long way in reducing the losses from the Mrema. A continued absence of support from Ukambani. So I say, where is he getting the numbers to compensate for the loss of the Mlima? Just on the basis of that, even leaving out the mobilizational capacity of the opposition and the rising political force of Gen Z and the Linda Grau's Mwananchi and initiative, you say the arithmetic's not adding up. Sustaining this momentum and consolidating a common front for the opposition is a significant and almost sufficient basis to see that President Ruto has a very narrow path to retaining power. On the second part, which you present as if it was just the same thing about Ruto leaving office, the president of Kenya has been acting as if he cannot see himself outside state power. The things he says, the impunity with which he builds churches in State House, the proliferation of state lodges and state houses across the country, are acts of a person who can envisage himself being there 5, 6, 7 more years. One of the most important things about the democratic transition is that persons in office should start preparing for when they are going home, and that the decision of when to go home is dependent on the electorate, not their aspirations. So I think just as the democratic project is being developed, as we try to tell some of our own to tone down the most brutal personal attack on the president, And as we keep asking the president to also act civil as a leader and stop using nasty language, we hope he can also start thinking about going home when he loses an election.
Correct.
All right. It's a great place to end the conversation there with Dr. Mukhisa Kituyi. He is the spokesperson for the United Alternative Government. Hashtag is Fixing the Nation NTV. When we come back, Boniface Mwangi, activist and presidential aspirant, building a better Kenya. How? Question mark. We'll be right back after this.